Hello, thank you for listening. My name is Sergei Volkov, and I want to tell you a story from a time when I was just 25 years old, a lifetime ago. Before the war, my world was black earth, the Chernozem. Rich, dark soil that clung to your boots and smelled of rain and eternity. I was a farmer, you see. My hands knew the language of seasons, the heft of a potato, the delicate promise of a seedling. I believed that all life was a cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting. You cared for the soil, and the soil cared for you. It was an honest contract. The war taught me that some contracts can be broken, that the soil itself can be poisoned. They made me a medic, put a red cross on my arm and a bag full of sterile things in my hand. But a farmer never really stops being a farmer. He just finds a different field to tend. And people ask me what it was like, that great offensive to push the Germans out of our brotherlands. They expect stories of flags and glory. But for me, it all comes down to the memory of a ditch in Poland and the smell of crushed yarrow in my hands. It began, as it always did, with the ground shaking. The summer of '44 burned. The air in Belarus and Poland was thick with dust and the ghosts of burned villages. We of the 47th Guards had been walking for weeks, our boots caked in the pale, sandy soil so different from my dark earth back home near Voronezh. This land felt tired, exhausted. It had suffered too much, but we were pushing. Always pushing, the order was forward, always forward. Lublin, Brest, names on a map that meant sweat and blood and the constant grinding noise of the war machine. My job was simple. When a man fell, I was to put him back together. I had my bag, a canvas thing full of gauze, morphine syrettes, sulfanilamide powder, the tools of a new trade. I learned to ignore the screams, to focus on the tear in the flesh, the pale look of shock, the rhythm of a man's breathing. I treated bodies like I treated blighted plants, cut away the rot, clean the wound, bind it, and pray the roots were still strong enough to live. It was a brutal kind of farming. That day we had just taken a small rise overlooking a river. The air was still heavy, too still. The silence in war is never peaceful. It's the breath a predator takes before it strikes. I was kneeling beside a young lieutenant, his leg a mess of red meat and white bone, when the sky tore open. Not our guns, theirs, a counterattack. The world dissolved into a hurricane of noise and flying dirt, mortars. The high, terrifying shriek of the Nebelwerfers, what our boys called screaming mimes. It felt like the sky was being ripped apart, and the ground, my old friend the earth, was bucking and heaving like a dying animal. I threw myself over the lieutenant, my body a useless shield against the steel rain. An explosion, closer than the rest, lifted me and threw me. Everything was white noise and the taste of grit. I landed in a shallow crater, my ears ringing with a sound like 1,000 angry hornets. My head swam. The lieutenant was gone, just a red smear on the churned-up dirt. My bag. I scrabbled for my medic's bag. It was gone, too. Ripped from my shoulder by the blast. I could see it, 20 meters away, torn open, its clean white contents scattered and soiled like fallen blossoms in a mud puddle. A mortar round landed squarely on it. A puff of canvas and dust, and it was simply gone. Everything, my morphine, my bandages, my sulfa, gone. My hands were empty, panic, cold and sharp. It was the farmer's panic, the moment you see locusts blackening the horizon, the moment you feel the first crack of a drought. I was useless, a farmer with no seeds, no plow, nothing but his bare, trembling hands while his entire field was dying around him. Men were screaming, cries of sanitor, medic, cut through the din. I couldn't move. My thoughts were stripped gears, grinding uselessly. What could I do? What could I possibly do? Then through the smoke I saw it, a dark line carved into the side of the rise, a German dugout abandoned in their retreat, a hole, a cellar, a place to put the harvest before the storm could destroy it all. My farmer's instincts took over where the soldiers' training had failed. Shelter. I wasn't a medic anymore. I was a peasant trying to save the potatoes from the frost. In here, I bellowed, my voice raw. Bring the wounded here. I scrambled, half crawling, half running, towards the dugout. It smelled of sour sweat, old fear, and damp earth. Inside, it was a tomb of shadows. Discarded ration tins, a few spent rifle casings. It wasn't a hospital. It was a wound in the earth itself, but it was cover. One by one they came, the walking wounded dragging the gravely injured. The groaning, bleeding harvest of the German counterattack. Young boys with old eyes, their faces gray with shock. A grizzled sergeant with his arm hanging by a thread of sinew. A radio man, his chest a bubbling crimson ruin, trying to speak, but only making a sound like a drowning bird. I had nothing. My mind raced, clawing back through years of memory, past the military training, back to the fields of Verkhny. Back to my grandmother. She was the village healer, a Zinakarka, some called her. She knew the secret names of the grasses. She knew what the forest offered. My eyes adjusted to the gloom. I looked at the raw, earthen walls of the dugout. Then I looked outside at the shell-torn ground. The war had leveled everything, but life is stubborn. Between the craters, I could see them. Weeds. To a soldier, they were nothing. To a farmer, to my grandmother's grandson, they were a pharmacy. I crawled out of the dugout, keeping low as machine gun fire stitched the air above my head. My hands, which moments before had felt so useless, were now searching, seeking. There, a patch of broad-leafed plantain. Podorojnik, every child knew it. You fall, you scrape your knee. Your mother chews a leaf and plasters it on the wound. Its broad leaves were natural bandages, cool and clean. I gathered handfuls, stuffing them inside my tunic. Further on, a feathery green plant with a flat top of white flowers. Yarrow, Tysiachelisnik, the thousand-leaf plant. Grandmother called it soldier's woundwort. She said it could stop bleeding faster than any doctor. Its scent, sharp and medicinal when I crushed a leaf between my fingers, was the smell of home, of scraped knees and summer afternoons. It was so jarringly out of place in this symphony of death. Back in the dugout, it was a butcher's shop. The air was thick with the coppery smell of blood and the low moans of men losing their grip on life. I went to the sergeant with the ruined arm. No tourniquet, no time. I grabbed a fistful of yarrow leaves, crushed them into a dark green pulp, and packed the mash directly into the gushing wound. He roared, a sound of pure agony, but I held his arm tight. I took a strip of cloth torn from a dead man's uniform, packed it with plantain leaves, and bound the arm as tightly as I could. The bleeding slowed. It slowed. I moved to the next man, a boy no older than 17 with shrapnel in his thigh. I had nothing for the pain, nothing but words. "Stay with me, little brother," I murmured, my hands working automatically. "Think of home. Think of the river." Outside, the world was ending. Inside this dark hole, I was just a farmer tending my broken plants. I used moss, scraped from the damp side of the trench, to clean a wound. Its natural iodine properties, something my grandmother swore by, tingled on my fingers. I found a willow sapling near the entrance, shattered by a shell. I stripped its bark and had the men who could still chew it. For the fever. For the pain, salicin, the foundation of aspirin. Old knowledge. For hours, which bled into a day, then another, I worked. The battle raged outside, a distant, angry sea. We were cut off. In that dugout, I was not Sergeant Volkov, medic of the 47th Guards. I was just Sergei, the boy from Verkhny, surrounded by the earth and its bitter gifts. The smell of crushed herbs mixed with blood and sweat. The feel of damp soil under my fingernails as I packed a wound. The low light, the whispers, the shallow breathing of 20 men suspended between life and death. Each time I saved one, I felt the phantom weight of a full sack of grain on my shoulders. Each time I lost one and I lost 3, it was the barren, dusty feeling of a failed crop, a winter of hunger. When our forces finally broke through and found us, they saw a scene from a nightmare. A dirt hole filled with pale, wounded men, covered not in clean white gauze, but in green poultices of leaves and mud. I was kneeling in the center of it all, my hands stained black with dirt and dried blood, whispering to a boy in his delirium, telling him about how to plant sunflowers to follow the sun. I spent the rest of my life as a farmer, went right back to it, but I never again looked at my fields the same way. Before the war, I believed that science, tractors, new fertilizers, that was the future. That was how you commanded the earth. But in that dugout, stripped of everything, with only the chaos of war and the ancient knowledge in my bones, I learned something else. I learned the earth doesn't need to be commanded. It needs to be listened to. It provides even when it is wounded, especially when it is wounded. Some things, some knowledge, you can't put in a bag or write in a manual. It has to be grown right inside of you. The hardest lesson is this. In the great roaring machine of war, you will be stripped of everything you think makes you who you are. Your tools, your rank, your plans, they will all be turned to dust. And in that moment, you find out what you're truly made of. You find out if your roots are deep enough to find water in a dry well. This memory is a piece of shrapnel I carry. It's heavy. Help me carry it. Subscribe and ensure these stories are never left to rust in silence.